Good morning and a warm welcome to all of you for joining us here at the webinar. It's a webinar that's part of a series of webinars organized by the Amsterdam Drone Week. And today you are joining us to listen to the views of all of us on how we can shape business models for evolving UAV service market. Thanks for joining us. And just before we go into the details, very quickly, you can please motivate you to ask questions by using the Zoom facility. You can click on Q&A to register your questions, and I'm your moderator. I will ensure that hopefully all of your questions are addressed. If you have any technical difficulties, please click on chat and the people in the background will be able to help you out. My name is Munish Khurana. I'm a Senior Manager of Business Development at Eurocontrol, and I will moderate the session today. Drone service market was estimated to be around 30 billion US dollars with an estimated compound annual growth rate of around 7 to 8% until 2030. Now, these are the figures according to the drone industry sites. These are big, astounding numbers, and the growth rate is indeed quite lucrative. However, in order to meet these growth rates, the industry needs to scale up its operations in order to have a positive business case. And it needs to scale up beyond visual line of sight operations, because that's really where the business case becomes positive, where we're able to fly drones beyond the visual line of sight for inspection purposes, surveillance purposes, delivery of parcels, and so on and so forth. However, in order for us to get to that stage where we have scalable BVLOS operations, there are a number of challenges that we must address. Now, these challenges are in a variety of categories: technical, operational, regulatory, lack of standards, need for more standards, financial, public perception, political will, and so on and so forth. Addressing these challenges is a must if we are going to achieve the positive business case. In this webinar, we want to discuss some of the key drivers that are shaping these business models of evolving drone services market. But we want to focus mainly on the mobile network operators and the role the telecom industry can play in helping us address a lot of those challenges and to help us understand the business drivers that will create a revenue model in future to have a sustainable and evolving, financially sustainable drone service market. To discuss these challenges and a lot more, I'm joined by 4 panelists today. I'm very thankful to all of them for joining us. And those panelists are Mr. Kapil Mittal, who's the head and co-founder of Ericsson Drone Mobility in the United Kingdom. So welcome, Kapil. We're also joined by Jan Peterson, who heads the Advanced IoT and Drones division at Telia Company in Sweden. Welcome to you, Jan. Then we have Han de Glint, who's joining us from Netherlands. Han is the business developer for IoT and data services at KPN. So welcome to you, Han. Last but not least, we have Barbara Pareglio. Barbara is the Smart Mobility Lead for the GSM Association, an association that brings together and speaks on behalf of all the mobile operators and provides an overall view. The way we're going to work today, ladies and gentlemen, is that I'm going to ask each one of my panelists to deliver a key message from their organization and how their organization is motivated to address some of the challenges and to share their insights about the business drivers of this evolving drone services market. And then once we've had a key message from them, we will then have about half an hour of Q&A discussions with them. I have some questions for them, but I'd very much like all of you to register your questions in the Q&A window, and I will do my best to address as many of those as possible. With that in mind, may I first invite Kapil from Ericsson to deliver your key message. So over to you, Kapil, and I will share your slides from my side.
Thank you, Manish. Glad to be here today morning.
All right. There we are. Okay, over to you. Oh, wait a second. I need to swap. That's better.
Thank you so much, Manish. Well, my name is Kapil. I'm based in UK and I'm responsible for driving an innovation at Ericsson Drone Mobility. And our focus is how do you enable the drone ecosystem to effectively use mobile network intelligence? Let's understand how we can effectively use that. Can you click it on the next slide?
Sure.
So if you understand and look into the mobile operators, there's so much of network intelligence and assets that they have, which could help the drone ecosystem with some of their challenges. And I'll focus on some of them here so that it forms a good base on understanding on how and what the mobile operators can effectively help the drone ecosystem with. For example, on the left, you see 5G network reliable connectivity. And as you could understand, 5G does bring higher speeds and good connectivity in terms of low latencies. And there are assets like quality of service on demand and network slicing that the mobile operators can effectively present to the drone ecosystem. Other important elements, as we also see across us, is when more and more drones are up in the air, how do you make sure that they are able to identify and you're able to remote control the drones from a remote location so that the beyond visual line of sight gets very effectively exercised. Other important elements, which are also from a regulatory perspective, is how do you avoid flying drones over crowds of people? And that's super important in terms of the permits that needs to be in place pre-flight and during flight. And that's where mobile operators can play a very vital role by providing real-time information from the sim density of where the crowds of people are. So some of these assets are already there today in the ecosystem that can be effectively used by drones. Next slide, Manish. Apart from some of the ground risk mitigations that we discussed on the earlier slide, another important element is what happens to the drone up in the air. That's something which we have to also understand for getting a good connectivity for the drones. So in our working with some of the mobile operators globally, we've done some research. For example, what you see on your slide, when a drone is on the ground, it gets very well connected because the mobile operators are focused on giving a terrestrial and on-ground coverage. But let's say a drone is up in the air at 120 meters. It starts getting a lot of weak signals from a lot of base stations on the ground, which would affect its connectivity, which would affect its interference, and so on and so forth. But what we've also realized working with mobile operators is they already have, for example, in 5G, examples like massive MIMO beamforming. By utilizing those existing features, they can provide seamless coverage for drones up in the air. In fact, earlier this year, GSMA published a very good technology white paper on their website, focusing on some of these assets that mobile operators are effectively able to present to the drone ecosystem. Next slide, Manish. And finally, just presenting a base for the webinar as well today. We've seen the technology, but it's more about the business models and commercialization as well. And we'll discuss during the webinar today the different roles that the mobile operators can have when approaching the drone ecosystem. It could be different value chains. We'll discuss that. And also some of the mobile operators, and we'll hear from some of them today, they've already started by providing, for example, drone SIMs or trying to get other APIs on board so that they're able to monetize those APIs from their networks as well as help the drone ecosystem. And I think we will discuss more about this in the webinar. Thank you, Manish.
Excellent. Many thanks, Kapil. Thank you for setting the scene and sharing with us the work that Ericsson's been doing. And I know that you guys have been doing this work with other telecom providers across Europe. So we hope to learn more from others as well. So with that in mind, I'll move on to my next panelist. My next panelist is Jan Peterson. As I said, he's from Telia Company. Jan, would you like to share your sides and deliver your key message from your organization, please?
Thank you, and good morning to all of you. So I'm representing Telia Company, and Telia is the market leader, MNO in Sweden. And when it comes to airspace digitalization, or UAV, Telia have the innovation journey started already 2016. So we have done a lot of proof of concepts, early adopter program, jointly with Ericsson and Capil, of course, and customers. And at this moment, in this fall of this year, we have decided to go from proof of concepts and this type of initiatives over to incubation. So we are now starting the next phase of our journey when it comes to bringing new services into this new industry. And based on all we have learned from the innovation projects we have done regards to drones, we have learned that our mobile network is ready for drones already. The terrestrial telecom network we have in Sweden, with the coverage of 98% of coverage, people coverage, and we can reach out more than 10,000 meters out in the coast with our network, and we can fly drones in the sky up to 7,000 meters with high speed already now. So regulations is really the barrier for this market to take off in Sweden. Our milestone is about to serve and to address the drone operators. We want to guide the drone operators for BVLOS missions by using our network capabilities and to become compliant with the regulation going forward. And this slide is what's, I mean, this slide is showing what is all about today. We have a lot of drone operators in Sweden that make VLOS missions. The Swedish police, they have about 400 drones, the same with a number of the utility companies like Vattenfall, for example. We have smaller startups that already make BVLOS missions, for especially when it comes to inspection of power grids. So things are accelerating when it comes to BVLOS missions this year. We also have a lot of interest regards to drones and the airspace from the governments. So the government in Sweden have proposed to change the rules so the police and the blue lights, especially the police, can use drones remotely. I'm thinking about drone-in-a-box solutions, so they can follow, for example, car number plates. And this is also something that is super interesting. So blue light and rescue services missions and first responder missions, that is really what we are after, and that the area that we in Telia want to start with. The regulations, the authorities, they have also really start to take off, if I may say so. This week, actually, we have had the first meeting. So the whole branch in Sweden with municipalities, the governments, the drone operators, and also the industry that provides the hardware and the capabilities of the network have met in one room to discuss what is the next steps when it comes to the use space, designing the use space, and what is needed from each and one, and how can we collaborate within this ecosystem to make sure that we can start using drones, making BVLOS missions in the Swedish market. And actually, yesterday, the first county council made an announcement. The county council of Gothenburg consists of 49 municipalities. They have now decided to start to design the use space within the county council. And I think that is really a step forward. And that is what we will collaborate around, all of us in the ecosystem, to learn from and to make sure that we can start to fly drones, BVLOS missions in a safe way. And finally, what we do now within the team is to start to launch mobile network capabilities, starting with a drone SIM, coverage maps, but also SIM density. So that is really the first milestone that we will launch in 2024. And we will do this in an early adopter program together with 5 to 10 enterprise customers. So with that, over to you, Munish. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. Thanks very much for setting the scene. We already have a number of questions in the Q&A box. So many thanks to those who are delivering the questions for the two speakers. So thank you. Please continue. I'd like now to move on to the next speaker. That's Han. Han, over to you to share your slides and deliver your message, please.
I think this is better.
That's much better now. We can see this.
Yeah, thank you, Jan and Kapil, and also Munish for the introduction and also setting the scene a little bit. Maybe just to give a little bit of background on the specific use case of the drone ecosystem in the Netherlands. In the Netherlands, we have one of the most heavily populated countries in the world, and we also have one of the best networks in the world. And what we are as a company, we not only in the drone ecosystem, but also in the other ecosystem, especially with the introduction of 5G, we have an enabler technology to really digitalize society and B2B environments. And this role of enabler, this is also what we see for ourselves as telco within the drone ecosystem. As we have the ambition to connect everybody and everything in a sustainable way, in a safe and a reliable way. And especially the safety and the security part is something we feel when we have discussion with aviation authorities, but also as we are such a heavily populated country, about half of the country is CTR region. Because of our airfields, there's a big accent on this part. If we talk about business models, we talk about value, and the value is not only about monetization. The value is also about bringing society to the next stage. We all know that there are challenges regarding workforce and security towards the future. And by participating in this ecosystem, we believe we can really help the Netherlands towards the next step. Another point, what we see is that the drone ecosystem is a relatively small ecosystem. We are participating in many diverse communities. So what helps us by participating in the drone ecosystem is that we can really fast test and validate new capabilities. And once again, 5G is a key technology towards digitalization in the future, and that technology brings a lot of advanced network capabilities. I think Kapil also mentioned this quite well. And what we do is bringing those API, those network capabilities in APIs towards our customers, so we can validate the value of those APIs and jointly learn about to integrate the solutions in the customer premises. So I think we are in the same journey as Jan mentioned from Telia. Some parts we are a little bit further, some parts we are a little bit behind. I think the GSMA paper explained quite well that there are different ways forward for telco. The first one is very straightforward. It's basic connectivity services. In a more advanced part, you're talking about value-added services or data services, and the third stage would be full service provision. And as I already explained, the key thing is enabling safe and reliable drone operations towards the future, especially in the BVLOS part. And that stresses the importance of reliable connectivity. So we provide connectivity services, and the first part is it says drone by M2M, but it means providing connectivity towards drone. We already do that, and you can order that, and we have productized that. The second part is and it's numbered here, number 3, is that we provide insight in the coverage in the air on the expected flight path. So you will know whether on the specific flight path you will have coverage. Then we go to the number second. What we arranged with 4 and 5G is that you get priority of your application on the mobile network, even in congestion areas. So if you combine those things, you can say with very high reliability that you will have connectivity on the expected flight path. And this is especially important for command and control of the drone operations. And this is already available. So application priority is not only a service we have developed for the UAV ecosystem, but also for other mission and business critical services. And as I mentioned in my introduction, we see this ecosystem in such a way that we can test those kind of services. And the fourth one, that is the next step on our roadmap, is because this is one of the most asked questions towards us in the Dutch ecosystem regarding ground risk mitigation, the so-called SORA 2.5, where you need to have insight in the amount of people that are on the expected flight path. And of all the available data sources available, we think, and many other people in Europe also think, that the mobile network operator can provide the most realistic, accurate, real-time numbers in this part. So yeah, I think we're I can wrap up. For us, we see ourselves in the role of the enabler by providing very reliable and safe services. So in such a way, the drone operations can then play in a safe way. We provide basic connectivity services, and we already provide value-added services on the data part, and of course we research other opportunities.
Excellent. Many thanks, Han. Thanks for highlighting that, because I think the first three presentations from the three speakers, and we still have one to go, really set the scene for a number of questions on where the MNOs can add value, what services you can provide, and how you can enable the drone operations. That really is all about enabling as such. Now, let's move on to the last speaker, and then we'll kick off with the Q&A. Barbara, would you like to share your slides and deliver your key message, please?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to be on this session. So my name is, you mentioned, you just introduced me before, is Barbara Parello, and I work in GSMA, which is the association, as you nicely pointed out, representing the mobile industry. What I'm going to talk about, I only have one slide, is in relation to the work we've been doing this year. But Jan already presented, but also all of the speakers talked about it, that we spend a good time of the year to try to work together and understand the business models that are out there, if they're already available on all end-to-end ecosystem, and also where actually the MNO play a role and how we see the business model from our perspective. So it's been here focusing on trying to go from the trial, as we mentioned, to go commercial and see what is the real business behind. On this on the slides that I'm going to just present, it's only one, and we talked about the use cases or what we can provide. I want to maybe then stress on the fact, what are the challenges and where do we see the challenges? This is a research that was done by GSMA Intelligence, I think it's also at the beginning of this year, where we did some survey on different stakeholders. So not just drone operator, but overall, all the different stakeholders could be UTM players or MNOs, but drone operator, drone manufacturer, etc. You can see that the top three challenges that you have there is pretty much the regulation, the ecosystem readiness, and all the business aspects. So that speaks loudly on the fact that we already talked about it, is there is a need to talk about how we actually implement and deploy those services, not just from a technical perspective, where are on the whole ecosystem and to be ready to deploy. And also the differences each countries, you will notice, is having a slightly different speed in a regulation, different approach on a regulation, and hence you also see the services we're pretty much mapping the pace, but also the needs regarding the regulation. One of the aspects that I also want to point out is that we also ask the questions, where do we see, or where do we believe we will see commercial BVLOS operation or as a mainstream? And I would say that's the majority of the participant of the survey answered between the let's say 25, 26. Similar answer was asked actually also last week in a different event, maybe more aviation driven. The answer was maybe 2030, so which is quite late. But that's to give you an indication that it's quite difficult to point out where we see the mainstream happening, and also where we're going. So with this one, I just want to just set up the scene a little bit for the conversation that we're going to have, and I hope it's reflecting also all the participants, if they think that those are the three main challenges that we see, or if there are other challenges also that are more relevant in a certain area. And I want to stop here so we can just go and maybe and see where we are.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And it's nice for you to put up that list. And certainly we will share these video with everyone and people can have access to that list, because certainly looking at those challenges, not so much in the priority order, but at least the list of all the challenges, I've heard those from other people as well. So it does look like a realistic list. So thank you very much for sharing those, Barbara. So let's open up the floor. So if I can ask all my panelists to switch on their videos and then we can have a joint discussion. We have about 25 minutes, and so far we have received a number of questions. Thanks very much to people who have asked questions: Vadim Kramer, Karel Abens, Kuhn, and also a number of anonymous questions. But let me first kick off with a high-level question. Now, Kapil, you highlighted in your presentation a value chain on your last slide, slide number 3. And then, Han, you highlighted as well the areas where you provide facilities and services to enable the drone services market. Jan, you highlighted very nicely to us the role that you are playing with your stakeholders in Sweden and how the city of Gothenburg has decided to go ahead with it. So it's all very well. What I'd like and to ask, maybe first starting with Kapil, is just thinking about the value chain that you highlighted. Where do you see are the opportunities to monetize? And I'll come back to Han, because Han made a very good comment. Value provision or value proposition to the community is not just about monetizing, but also providing safety and security values. But let's first focus on monetizing, and then we'll move on to other aspects. Could you share your views on opportunities there are in that value chain to monetize, please?
Thanks, Manish. I think that's a very relevant question, because innovation, of course, solves specific problems, but ultimately it's about monetization and commercialization for the industry to sustain. As we could see from some of the slides and the discussions that we had from both Telia and KPN, there are assets already there in the network. With minimum investment, they can start monetizing those assets. And I'll give 2 small examples here. One, for example, is how do you provide real-time information to the drone ecosystem for mitigating the ground risk? That information is already there. That information is also provided, could be provided to the UTM players for, and also to the civil aviation authorities for providing the permits. And that's a good monetization case which could be started already today. Other element which some of the operators have started, and I'll take an example of British Telecom here in UK, which has started providing drone SIMs. And that's a very basic element to start with, showing the ecosystem that the money is already here to be made by both mobile operators and the drone ecosystem. With drone SIMs, the drone is at least having a specific quality of service. And again, elements like network slicing are already here today, which are used in Industry 4.0. So some of these assets, mobile operators are already starting to leverage towards monetization.
Very good. In fact, I'll use this opportunity, Kapil, because there's a question from Vadim Kramer, which is specifically about network slicing. And I repeat that. Thank you, Vadim, for your question. How many drones equipped with communication module supporting network slicing exists on the market? Just an estimated figure, not the exact figure.
Manish, that's a very good question. And I think that's also one of the challenges that we have in the market, because many of these assets are again proven as proof of concepts. What is required to enable this ecosystem is the drones to have a 4G or 5G chipset embedded into it, so that the behavior of the drone can be modified while the flight is happening. So, for example, in some of these concepts we have shown using network slicing in UK, you can actually control the drone from Finland and Sweden, and so on and so forth. But again, in terms of market numbers, they're not so much unless the drone ecosystem manufacturers are embracing the technology on board of the drone.
Yeah, sure. So that's a good point and a very good question as well. Thank you, Kapil. I'll move to Jan now. Jan, you seem to be very busy in Sweden right now, engaged with your community, particularly not just in Gothenburg, but also wider than that. Where do you see are the opportunities to monetize, particularly. Let's first focus on in that region, in Sweden and in Nordic countries, and then generally. Could you share your views, please?
Of course. So our innovation journey is very much to learn from the customers. But this is a very immature industry. So, and all the players in Telia and the customer side and authorities, there are small teams. So that is really something to consider. When we listen to the customers at this very moment, I mentioned that some of the drone operators have already started to do BVLOS missions in Sweden. And when they come back to us, they ask, Telia, can you provide SIM density and ground risk? And this is very much regards to the SORA. Because to get the permit for BVLOS missions, they need to provide the ground risk issue. So, and Telia, we have used, when it was COVID, we were also asked by the governments, can Telia provide data on where are people in the cities, etc. So this is something that we have done already. So we are used to provide data around where people are in the community. So that's something that we want to start with, to provide the SIM density and ground risk and that data to the CISP and also, of course, to the drone operators by providing it by APIs, of course. And this is new for us. Normally, we have not traditionally provided network capabilities or network data via APIs. This is really something we see for software developers in this new industry and hyperscalers, that there is a need. So this is, I think, where we want to start. And then we take it from there step by step, listening very carefully on the drone operators' requirements, etc.
Excellent. Thank you. So far we have heard from Kapil and Jan opportunities to monetize from a telecoms perspective by providing real-time information for mitigating ground risks. I think both of them highlighted it, which is very, very interesting, particularly also for me, coming from Eurocontrol, the aviation industry, and also at the same time for providing the drone SIMs, no doubt. Now, before I go to Han and Barbara, I'll just use this opportunity to highlight that this thing that both of you have highlighted, where telecoms can provide an opportunity to estimate the drone the population density on the ground is extremely important. And I shall share my screen for a minute to highlight the work that we are doing. Here you see, I don't know if you can, I'll just highlight this here. I'd like to show you, okay, let's just work on this one. I'd like to show you pictures. If you look at the left side, this is the population density map. We at Eurocontrol, along with the blessing of EASA, have put together a methodology for conducting airspace risk assessment. And for that, we need to take a look at the airspace above to see how congested it is, and also to look down to see what the ground density looks like. And based on that, we can then design solutions to meet the objectives of cities like Gothenburg, for that matter, to see what kind of opportunities exist to fly small drones for delivery purposes, for essential services, and in which areas, in those that are highly populated and also facing an airspace which is very congested above, there could be limited opportunities, and in other areas there'd be more. But that's not just to say that we limit just there. There is then the question to the authorities that if indeed they want to fly drones in those areas with high density areas, both in the air and on the ground, there's a question to reorganize. Now, is that worth reorganizing or not? But that's a definition. Sorry, that's a question for the authorities to take care of. So it was just to highlight that the work that you guys are doing will help the SORA, no doubt, for every operational risk assessment, but also to do an airspace risk assessment, which is a mandatory requirement of the U-Space Regulation 664. And at Eurocontrol, we are helping at least 8 cities, and we have a list of another 10 after that, to support conducting this sort of assessment. I'd like to move on to Han now. Han, so far, both Jan and Kapil have talked about opportunities to monetize by providing the facilities whereby they mitigate the risks and also to provide drone sims. You guys are very heavily dominated in the Netherlands, which is, as you say, a very congested area in terms of telecoms provision. What opportunities do you see that are over and above and different to what we've heard so far to monetize?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. From a customer perspective, I would say the first type of customer would be the drone operator.
Yeah.
I think we discussed this.
Yeah.
The second type of customer would be the UTM service provider or the U-Space service provider, who also needs information and data to provide their services. But as Jan said, the drone ecosystem is not so, the BVLOS drone ecosystem is not so mature yet, and I would say the U-Space ecosystem is even less mature. So we are still in the process of validating our propositions and our ideas over there. Moving a little bit to the secondary kind of type of customers, we see municipalities,
yeah,
or regulators who are interested in that. And one of our business propositions we see, which is in the paper, but which is not being discussed here yet, is that we believe we have many mobile assets in the country where we provide very reliable internet, we provide power services. And what you see is that UTM service providers or U-Space service providers need sensors and connectivity in many spaces around the region. So we are validating that opportunity.
That's excellent. And I think, if I'm not wrong, based on your presentation, Han, that once the drone operations are fully commercially and in a scalable manner operational, the opportunities for additional customers are plenty, because then once you start using the drone as an IoT device, which then connects to many others, that then opens up a whole new world of provision of data and connecting various IoT devices. Is that something that KPN will look at in future?
Yeah, definitely. So we have a roadmap, and some ideas are a little bit further in the future. But we, for example, we see a nice use case of the blue light district where they have a drone in a box solution. But if you have such a device, maybe the blue light is not the best case, but you can, for example, if you have an inspection drone, you can use it to inspect mobile assets, but you can also use it to inspect energy assets of an energy company or towers from that perspective. Or if you have a drone in a box solution in agriculture, you can inspect the crops from 2 different type of farmers. So then you have multiple type of customer for one single drone. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Han. Koen Mousewinkel has asked a question, which I think is best addressed to Barbara. And Barbara, you focus in your slide some of the challenges that are being faced. And the number one challenge was related to regulations. And Koen asks this: for BVLOS enablement, regulation is needed. How can we help regulators to accelerate the use of BVLOS drones? Perhaps you could widen that question and just say how the GSM community is engaging with the regulators.
It's very, it's quite, it's not an easy answer to say, but it's a stepwise approach, I have to say. So I totally understand. I started working in this area more than 7 years ago, So it's a completely different mentality that we have in the telecommunication, what you have in aviation, or what you can see in automotive even, or other areas. So I've been working, in different areas. The challenges are multiple on different, not just a single challenge. And not, connectivity communication is just one of the topics in the list for allowing BVLOS. So we totally understand that it's quite difficult. But how, for example, as a GSMA, we approach it. On all this year, the first things that we did is try to understand, to assess our networks and be sure that before we go out and say you can use the network, that we did the due diligence to understand where we could. After that, we started engaging with the relevant entity and authority, the civil aviations, like in Europe, the ASA, or even the local, national civil aviations in some areas. And we try to see at least the one that are driving a little bit further. So I can tell you that as a GSMA, I cannot, talk to all the countries and all the civil aviations. So we try to go and have a conversation with some of the relevant entity. In Europe is the ASA, in US is the FAA, but we also talk to the ICAO. So we try to talk to the different entities where we can try to see and explain what we could do. And that is one area. But don't forget that, as Jan said, but I'm sure that also Hans does the same. So each individual MNO that is actually interested in getting in this business, they will need and they will talk to the local authority, because there's no option. You cannot just, release a SIM. We just have to have this conversation. It's impossible to create the ecosystem, create the trust. You have to have the conversation with the local authority. How, to answer again the answer of Kuhn, how we accelerate, that is very pretty much depending on the local environment. Maybe I can also revert it to each of the speakers, but what I see is there's been a very slow progress. There's a lot of trials, but now I believe they kind of create a little bit more an environment and understanding of the things, so the regulator is able to see that it's progressing. What I think we also have to be able maybe to work with the regulator, at least I heard in a few cases that we tested the technology, different technology, but we sometimes do sandbox. So there's a need of more sandbox maybe, or more testing area which are closer to the reality of the BVLOS operation. And what I'm trying to say here is, like, if I have to test, to give an example, a situation which is more closer to a urban area, I cannot have a testing environment which is in an airport in the middle of nowhere, because it's not significant to the actual operation that I'm doing, and the other way around. So if I have to do an inspection in the rural or close to the coast, the conditions, not just the technical condition, but all the conditions are completely different. So those is something that we notice, and it's a two-way street. So the regulator can give more access to do things that are closer to reality, so that we can provide the best data, because I understand they need the data, but to get you the data, I need to try. Otherwise, I just give you, an idea what it could be.
Indeed, you make a very good point there, Barbara, no doubt. And I highlight that further, is that there are more and more sandboxes being created. It's also being encouraged by the EU Drone Strategy 2.0. The whole idea of the sandboxes is that we should be able to test drone flights in different conditions, different weather conditions, longer periods of time, to check their reliability, their robustness, their quality, and so on. And then try and get as close as we can, as you quite rightly say, Barbara, to the real situation. We'll never get there, no doubt, 100%, but as close as possible. But at least that way, a sandbox allows us. But you make a good point that we need sandboxes, not just outside in the rural areas, but also in other areas close to the urban environments where we can do some proper testing. And I know that there are a number of test centers, drone test centers, that are being created in clusters across Europe, Vadim from VTT in Finland is part of it, and he's also listening in. They are creating these test centers across Europe, and the European Commission is very much helping them and supporting them to do that. I have a question from Carol Abbens, which I think is addressed to Jan. How did you in Sweden arrange electronic conspicuity for BVLOS flights and U-Space? Over to you, Jan.
Good question. Can you just a little bit more in detail what this question was about?
I think that the question, if I can interpret this question, it's probably more she's asking how in Sweden the MNOs arrange electronic conspicuity for BVLOS flights when you did any testing or are currently doing any testing. Did you use, let's say, the SIM cards on the drones to be able to identify their tracking? I think Han may also be able to answer that, but maybe you can share your views first, Jan, and I'll move to Han.
Yeah, I can start, and then Han can continue. So with the tests we have done, we have been part of one really interesting project called PNK, Positioning, Navigation, and Communication, towards the national UTM system. And this is not in place at this very moment, but it will be in the next 6 to 9, 12 months.
Right.
However, so what we have done there is very much to trial where the mobile network on different altitudes in order to see how is it possible to fly in the air on different altitudes, BVLOS. And that is really what we have done when it comes to trials in Sweden. So we have not at this moment done anything when it comes to battery. Over to you, Han.
Yeah, I would say this is a very highly dynamic market. So KPN also has not released a product for this. We did also some trials with a hook-on device. So if you have a BVLOS drone, which is operated by an command and control link with an operator, you can use that also for network remote ID. But what we see is that the question about security in the airspace and integration with manned aviation, then there needs to be something done with uncooperative drones. And that means that you need a multi-layer technical solution, I would say, to detect all kinds of different airspace uses, whether it's a drone or a parachutist or a glider or a helicopter. And you get, I would say, a little bit of a mix between standards within manned aviation, like ADSB Lite, and remote ID. So this is a very dynamic market in the Netherlands. Yeah.
Indeed, very much so. Excellent. I'd like to move on now to the next stream of questions. Today we have in the value chain, again, going back to the third slide of Kapil, a number of stakeholders and partners. Now, once we have drone services market fully operational, commercialized, and scalable, we will need to create a pretty good and sustainable value chain and a supply chain for third parties to deliver their service, their products, which feeds into the scalable market. Where do you think we are today? Do we have a sustainable value chain that exists and is capable of scaling operations? Or I fear that one day when we reach that commercial gate, that we can start the scalable operations, we may not have a mature market of third parties to deliver operations to scale up. Kapil, could you share your views about how you see this value chain emerging, please?
In our opinion, over the last couple of years, we've seen the market is embracing the use of drones, whether it's for their own internal efficiency or for use cases like inspections and deliveries and logistics. And to be honest, we've seen over the last 3 years, a lot of startups getting into this space from an innovation sandbox point of view, but also at the same time failing to commercialize it. And I think that's always there in a new industry which gets on board. But interestingly, what we're also seeing is this hyperbola that we've seen in IoT and connected vehicles. The drones are in a space where the hype is getting more into reality. And that's where a lot of ecosystem partners are getting on board. I'll take an example of one specific enabler here, which the drone ecosystem should focus on is the drone manufacturers getting on board to provide a 4G or a 5G chipset on top of a drone. Yes, currently there are hook-on devices which can sit on top of a drone. It could have an LTE or a satellite connectivity as well. But going forward, and we've seen likes of Skydios getting on board. Nokia also recently announced another drone which has a 5G chipset on top of it. So once the 4G and 5G technology gets on board of a drone, many of these things that we're talking about, like likes of network slicing, etc., can be enabled. Yeah. And that would propel the entire drone ecosystem towards more monetization and commercialization.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, that's Jan. Do you want to come in?
Yeah, I can comment on this one. Back to Sweden. I mean, 5G is developed for autonomous vehicles and drones. So and what we have done together jointly with Ericsson is that we have provided the innovation network for car manufacturers and universities and those ones that really want to trial and understand and prepare for how to use drones in the sky to become more efficient. So and these opportunities have been very well received in the market, and this is really a complex new industry to understand, where aviation and telco needs to coexist. So I think learning by doing is really the way to go forward. Another thing, when you do this, for example, the blue lights, and when we talk about regulators, this is also something we need to push in the market. We cannot wait for the regulator to another 2-3 years.
Yeah,
I think you need really to understand what are the for example, for blue lights, what are the risks when it comes to safety, having drones in the air, versus the benefits by having drones in the air to make a safer society. So those are the things that we in the ecosystem needs to discuss and challenge each other to take the right steps forward. And this is really about collaboration. Without this, we will not make this happen.
Thank you, Jan. I think I need to wrap up now. We've only got less than 2 minutes left. Just to bring everyone and everything together over the last sort of 45 to 50 minutes that we've spoken, we've heard a lot of good ideas and some insights into some of the challenges we face to create a business market for evolving drone services. We've looked at to see how the MNOs, the mobile network operators, can support the industry. They can provide, no doubt, the real-time information of drones for mitigating risks on the ground as well as in the air. They can also provide hook-on devices and drone sims to help identify the position of the drones as they move forward. A lot of the data that we need to gather for ground population density can be gathered, as Han and Jan both pointed out, which is needed for SORA applications as well as the strategic airspace risk assessments required by the drone operations. We need to do a lot more work on, I would say, understanding the regulations and also engaging with national as well as local authorities, as Barbara pointed out, to be able to explain the needs of the industry and where the regulators need to support them. And I think, as you highlighted in the end, Jan, it's a relationship. It's a two-way relationship. We need to explain the needs of the industry clearly to the regulators so they can then help us coming up with regulations which, when verified and validated, can then be provided. We looked at the various zones and areas where monetization can take place. One is before we go commercial, and also when we go commercial, we provide services to the drone operators, the USSPs, the cities itself, the regulators, but hopefully also in future, once they're fully scalable, we use the IoT capabilities to connect and provide services. Look where internet is today, or telecoms, mobile phones are today compared to where they were 20 years ago. So I believe there's a lot of, we have some known knowns that we are working on. We have known unknowns that we're working on, but I believe the category of unknown is untapped yet. And that's where a lot of these capabilities are going to be monetized in future. With that in mind, I'd like to thank all the attendees, the viewers who've logged on to this webinar. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for asking all your questions. I've tried my best to bring as many questions to the panelists as I could. Thank you very much to the moderator, to the speakers, all four of you, for sharing your thoughts transparently. Many thanks to Amsterdam Drone Week for providing a platform. I wish you a very pleasant rest of the day. I'm sure this video will be available later on online. Have a great day and a wonderful Christmas. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Bye bye.